Hey guys, welcome back to Maelstrom Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we are going to discuss another tournament review of my own. I recently went to a small RTT, I believe there were 14 of us, and brought my Tyranids for a first competitive tournament in maybe a month or so, maybe 2 months even. I had to take a little bit of a break from tournaments just because the way the schedule worked out, but we were back. And the red bugs go fast, and the new form has done very well. So we're going to talk about all of that in this video. If that sounds good, do like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our content similar to this. And if you want to help support the channel out just a little bit more, do consider becoming a member. Members, you get access to some member exclusive videos. There's a Discord and other perks like that. So with all that out of the way, let's dive into today's video. Okay, so a little bit of an overview for this tournament, as we always do. There were 12 players, 12 players at this tournament. 3 Marine players, I believe it was Space Wolves, Ravenwing, and Ultramarines. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think those were the 3. A Sisters, a Guard, Custodes, a Knights. And then for Chaos, we had a World Eater and a Thousand Sun, and then a generic Chaos Space Marine. And for Xenos, we had 1 Nid player, me, and 1 Harlequin player. So a nice variety in this tournament. Not too much of one thing besides Space Marines, and even those were diverse enough and into Space Marines. So good there. Other notes, it was player plays terrain. We all had somewhat equivalent terrain, and we did not know the missions ahead of time. So it was just pretty casual, just let's have some fun for a Saturday type event, which are always fun. So my army list I wanted to bring back my red bugs go fast, so this was the name I dubbed my Kraken list from March, April. My first GT I took the Tyranids to when their new codex came out. There's a video somewhere if you really want to see that. But with point changes and everything, I hadn't come back to Kraken for a little while in terms of a competitive style list, so I wanted to do that with this one. So things I'm trying out in this list was Old One-Eye. That's probably the biggest one. Is he worth it? I mean, he had a hell of a set of games there, so I really loved Old One-Eye from this. I'd taken him with Adaptive Biology. I then took a Tervagon, something other people are taking right now. Tervagon with the Maw Claws of Thyrax. I think I've always loved the Tervagon. Always loved it. It's just, was she the most competitive? But now with the point increases, she did not go up in points, so she is looking like a much more attractive pick, and I really liked it. I also gave her Adrenal Glands, Toxin Sacs because I had the 5 points, and Direct Guidance. A lot of other people with the Tervagon are doing Heightened Senses, so she has full rerolls to hit and wound. I much prefer Direct Guidance because that way the turn she's not in combat, she is still helping out someone else in my army, because as you'll see, my entire army besides my HQs are core, so helped out there. And of course, last, a Neurothrope with Synaptic Tendrils is just giving the Tervagon or the other Zoanthropes 3d6 when casting and giving itself 3d6 casting. My psychic powers are crucial, and I need those ones to go off, so it's worth the CP as a Warlord trait for me. In the troop choices, we had 2 groups of 3 warriors. They had pair of Bone Swords, Death Spitters, 1 Venom Cannon in each. No Adrenal Glands, had to sacrifice that on the points for some of my bigger units later on, but they didn't really fight a whole lot except maybe a little bit on turn 4 or 5, so it was okay. Elites, we had 1 unit of 3 Zoanthropes. Loved their psychic potential, and their invuln save is also very useful. In the fast attack, we had two groups of 5 Raveners. Now in this case, I was doing just Rending Claws, no guns. I wanted to see, I should have done the math beforehand, but I wanted to see how it paid off because I don't have a Hive Tyrant to give them reroll ones, if just them having reroll ones built in was worth it. I think it was good. It was a good choice, though there are cases where the guns probably would have been better, and there were cases where just pure melee was better. So it's a tough toss-up that I'm struggling with there. Heavy support, we had 3 Screamer Killer Carnifexes with Adrenal Glands and Spore Cysts on all of them, and then one of them had the Synaptic Enhancement, and that Synaptic Enhancement was huge, allowing him, the one Synapse one, to kind of hang back just a little bit and extend my Synaptic Imperatives or Psychic powers out to the middle of the field. That way I didn't have to sacrifice my warriors or sacrifice my Tervagon or anything to get too close up in the middle of the board where I needed to get those powers off. This Synapse Carnifex did his best to kind of play more passive and not show his face until turn 3 or 4 or 5. Well, no, 3 or 4, then he would fight off. But allowed to get me those powers off into my opponent's mid to back field was great. So let's talk about the games. First game, so I did say, we'll see in the title, this was a 3-0 tournament appearance by Tyranids with an asterisk. I can't really make a star with 2 fingers, with an asterisk. And you'll see why in this. So the first one was the Harlequins. He had just, I would say, a pretty typical list. Lots of boats. I think he had, 4 transports, 2 of the heavy support boats, lots of troops, and then some of the bikes. Nothing, I think, out of the ordinary there. Just lots of little things with the invones were kind of annoying to bring down. My secondaries, and this was a 48-45 win. So low scoring, again, I'll talk about that. My secondaries were Cranial Feasting, Psychic Interrogation, and Banners. I think all 3 of them turned out pretty well for me for the most part. We only played through the first 3 full turns because we ran out of time. Had we gone to turn 5, he probably would have beaten me. If we're going into turn 4, I would have picked up a whopping 0 on primary, which would have probably cost me the game. Now after that, I probably could have fought and killed a lot of his stuff, but that 12-point hit right there was going to leave a big mark and probably would have cost me the game. He explained every little detail of his army, every little detail, and that probably took up 15 or so minutes. So, you know what, that's all right. It's a fun game. We know we got to be a little quicker on that one. Game 2 versus Space Wolves. This was a 71/74 draw. Again, I'll talk about that later. He had 6 Bolter Aggressors outflanking because he's Space Wolf strat for them outflanking. He had 2 groups of Eliminators because the snipers are pretty good. A big block of 5 Eradicators, 2 Contemptors with Multi-Meltas and Fists because they can be really nasty in close combat and, you know, decently durable with the -1 damage and everything. He had some characters, some intercessors. The characters were like a tech marine, that was important. He had a standard tech marine, Argic, I think, Rock Fist, and just a standard captain, I believe was what they were. Anyway, my secondaries was Cranial Feasting, Synaptic or Psychic Interrogation, and no prisoners. The Tervagon really shined in this list, giving me a solid 15 victory points from Psychic Interrogation. They killed 2 aggressors, and she killed 4 of the Eradicators on her own. She did really well. The Raveners also, you know, continued to do their thing, cleaning up all of the troop choices and the Eliminators and stuff. So really happy with those. Minor rules hiccup, and we only finished turn 4. Had it gone to turn 5, I probably still would have picked up the win. The reason I put this 74 in brackets because mistake was made that he thought the Tech Marine had 5 wounds. It only had 4 because it was not a Primaris one. It was the end of the game. I didn't really want to argue it. We had to get to the next round. So we called it 71-71 draw, and that is what it is. People make mistakes. No hard feelings, nothing there. But in my mind, for how the list performed, it was a win because what happened was I attacked his Tech Marine on the last turn with my warriors. I did 4 wounds to it. Should have killed it, but it didn't. He survived on 1 wound. Honest mistake on that one. No worries. But that was that. So then we move on to the third game where I play another Space Marine player. I play the Ravenwing. And this was a mighty game. I had a few really good rolls, which really swung it, but it was a 98-44 win for the Tyranids. Now his list was scary. I've played against some things I've never played against before, which I always love. He had these Dark Talon planes, as you can see in the picture here. Those things have some wild guns. So they're D3 shots, and they are like strength 12, AP doesn't really matter, because as soon as they hit, or as soon as they wound, they go straight to flat 3 mortal wounds per wound. So it was nasty. So turn 1, he flew 2 of these up to buy my Zonethropes, and just bing, bing, and then Zonethropes were gone turn 1 for me. Now I went first, so that was helpful. So I at least got 1 turn, but I did not anticipate them just dropping my Zonethropes right off the bat. So I probably should use the Invone save or 5-up Feel No Pain one right away for my Synaptic Imperative, but I didn't. So I basically played this whole game without the Zonethropes, which hurt, but we were able to get through it. So I was fast melee, he was fast shooting. That kind of gave me a little bit of the upper hand, because Ravenwing typically play, I am faster than you, so I can stay out of melee from you and I can just shoot you and do my thing. Well, not the best matchup, because I am as fast as you and I'm better than you in melee, so I can close the gap and kill you. Theme of the game there. My secondaries were Banners, Cranial Feasting, Psychic Interrogation. I know, real shock with these ones. I'm really playing into those few things that I can do. Old One Eye had himself one wild game. He was shot at turn 2 and then regenerated slowly, and then he was shot at turn 3, regenerated slowly, turn 4 regenerated, and turn 5 he was finally brought down. But he took so much with him, along with his other actually 2 of his Carnifex buddies didn't really do anything. One of them did get into melee and did mess up a unit of bikes. Very bad damage, or good damage for us, good damage for the Tyranids, but they basically just paved the way for Old One Eye to drop 3 characters, 1 speeder, big Primaris speeder, and a whole bunch of bikes. He single-handedly got me 13 Cranial Feasting points. Because on one of the characters he did kill, I was able to get a CP back, which gave me an additional 3 points. So yeah, that was an awesome game. It didn't feel like the score was that big of a difference than it was, but yeah, that's what the score ended up being. So how I thought the list fared, I'll just kind of run through this quickly. I think the list did really well as it is intended to be playing. I think matchup 2 and 3, I got paired against armies that I excel at, especially in the secondaries. Well, I'll talk about the secondaries a little bit, but for Old One Eye, did awesome. Turvagon did awesome. Game 3 for the Turvagon, she actually didn't fight anything. She was just tucked in a building because he had so much shooting that could just obliterate my Gaunts, and then full takedown of the Turvagon. I kind of kept her very reserved. Luckily, his characters had to be within 24 inches of her, so she could just sit in the middle, surrounded by her Gaunts, and they could be protected, and she could give me the 15 Cranial Feasting points with ease. Didn't really need to bring her into the combat at all. But otherwise, yeah, she did great. Neurothrope, awesome. Never have a complaint with the Neurothrope. Always getting my powers off. Always smiting when I need to, or whatever the case may be. Awesome there. The Termagants did fine. I don't think they really ever killed anything, but the ability just to screen my Termagant, hold an objective, be a unit to do an action here or there was great to have. The Gargoyles, again, they didn't do a ton, but they were there to hold an objective, do a banner, and then they could, they had a decent amount of movement if they needed to, so they could zip around to wherever they had to go, kind of mid to late game. So Gargoyles are fine there. The Warriors were fine. I really didn't use them for damage. I used them just for synapse, bubbles, again, doing actions, not really fighting anything in melee too much, but yeah, so can't complain with them much. Zonethropes, give an A-. I think they did just fine for how they did. Maybe my A- is harsh because they didn't really get to fight back on on the third game, but other than that, I think the Zonethropes were fine. Raveners, you guys know me, I love my Raveners, so they performed exactly how I wanted to, barring a change I'll talk about. And the Screamer Killers. It's interesting with the Screamer Killers, I bring a unit of 3 of them. Always when I've tried out this list, one of them dies turn 1. I think I've only played 1 game where I don't lose one on the first turn. And then on turn 2, one of them dies again, but maybe another one makes in the combat, and then turn 3, the last one dies, and then turn 4, Old One-Eye he's there hopefully messing things up. So the Screamer Killers, they do kill some stuff, but mainly they soak up a lot of that shooting that probably would be going towards, well, it's got to be going towards them because they are my threat. So I think they did okay. They are pricey, but paying for the Sporocyst and Adrenal Glands does make them pretty durable and pretty threatening all at the same time. Would I change my list? I really like the way the list plays right now. I think it has a great balance of anti-tank, anti-infantry, psychic. I wish I had one more psyker, but it's not really doable to take in. I really love Old One-Eye, and I don't know if it's worth dropping him for a Flyerant if I can't take the Flyerant Tyrant Guard, because a Flyerant is pretty easy to get dropped out of the sky if I'm not careful. And then I would want to give that thing a Relic and Warlord trait, which would cost me CP, and it gets a little dicey there. So I kind of like it the way it is. I do struggle against, with the secondaries, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. Cranial Feasting and Psychic Interrogation are awesome, but only against certain opponents. If I were to be playing Grey Knights, Thousand Suns, heck, even the Necrons and World Eaters with their 4-up deny psychic power strats, those ones really hamper psychic interrogation for me. Now, I have a really easy time getting the power off and rolling high warp charges, but those armies that can now have 4-up denies, as they are starting to become more common, or Grey Knights if they really want to do a 3d6 deny, makes it tricky to take a secondary, because every time they're successful, even if they beat me, 2 out of 5 times, that's still denying me 6 points and potentially a victory point or 2. So it will struggle against those cases. Cranial Feasting is great, especially if your opponent is melee and they're typically Space Marines who have stuff, sergeants in everything. But if I'm playing Eldar, there aren't really sergeants in Eldar. In the Aspect Warriors, sometimes they have their Exarchs, which would count, but not every armies have sergeants, and not every army is in melee. So sometimes that one can be a bit tricky, though I still like it because I am such a melee-focused army. And third option is really a bit of a crapshoot for this. Banners is great on some of the maps, but if I'm up against not the right opponent on a mission where I can't reliably do banners, I'm going to really struggle on that third objective to take. So it is a struggle. It's not as clean as I normally like to make my lists, where it is, okay, I'm going to take this, this, and this, and that's how it's going to do. That's also the nature of Tyranids in Warzone Nephilim. Secondaries are not like other armies where it's, okay, I'm going to take these 3 all the time, and it's going to be, that's the game plan. Tyranids are a bit struggling when it comes to the secondary choices. Now, taking secondaries against this list is still, the only obvious one is no prisoners is pretty obvious. I think every one of my opponents got close to 10 points, if not more than that, on this. So that's the only obvious choice. But yeah, so that's the way that one is. Any other changes I take? There are 2 changes. So Raveners, I did try them out without guns. I think the guns are still better to do. However, my only real issue is to not taking guns is that if I take guns, I could be shooting myself out of charge range, and I could be killing sergeants who therefore go against my Cranial Feasting points. So it's a bit of a toss-up there. I still think the guns are good, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. Guns, no guns, I lean towards guns, but the no guns did well, so The other option, again, and this is something I want to ask all of you, make sure I'm not missing anything. In my list, I built it as 1 unit of 3 Screamer Killers and upgraded as it is. But I think maybe I should do it as 3 separate Screamer Killers. I don't see any reason why that would be an issue, barring when you're deploying, you deploy them each individually. But because I deploy them individually, instead of having my whole Carnifex block on one flank, I could put 2 on one flank and have 1 on another flank to anchor it over there. But then maybe that one's all alone and he's not really going to get buffed by the rest. I don't know. That was another thing I thought of. Maybe I want to not just have 4 Carnifexes all in a wall running at my opponent. But at the same time, it's kind of scary for them and it's kind of a threat saturation thing. So I don't know. That's pretty much it. So 3-0, 3-0 with an asterisk. Technically, I was 2-1, 2-0-1. And I got second place because there was one guy who went 3-0, but I also kind of went 3-0. Yeah, that's it. Still loving the Tyranids, still loving Hive Fleet Kraken as it is. So that is that. I'll leave that video. Keep it. Hopefully, I didn't ramble too much and you guys got some information out of it. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios.